In chapter 15 of Proteinaholic, what did you mean by how much protein do we need?
Yeah, how much protein do we need? That's a tough question to answer because everybody's different. Are you male? Are you female? Do you exercise? How much do you exercise? What are your genetics? The RDA, which is the recommended daily allowance, was based on many studies over many years. People think it was like one study, and it wasn't. It was many studies over many years. And it had pretty impressive results that the average person didn't need that much protein. Now, they say that the average woman needs 46 grams of protein. The average male needs 56 grams of protein. We get way more than that. I mean, we average, and depending what studies you look at, whether it's NHANES or other studies, anywhere from 70 to 100 grams of protein. We're almost doubling what the RDA is. You also got to understand that the RDA is not what the average person needed. It's the average person plus 2 standard deviations. When they were setting the RDA, they wanted to make sure that they didn't miss anybody, that they said 56 grams of protein covered everybody. So probably people need less than, not probably, most people need less than 56 grams of protein, most men, but they said 56 just to be sure. We're eating 100, some people more. I mean, bodybuilders trying to get 180, 200. That's way more than we know that they need. Now, after that, there were some studies looking at a different way. So the RDA measured protein based on nitrogen utilization, and those aren't that accurate. There's some other studies based on amino acid utilization and muscle protein synthesis. A lot of bodybuilders focus on this muscle protein synthesis. Muscle protein synthesis could be very inaccurate. The studies could be very inaccurate. And there's no real study that I've seen looking at muscle protein synthesis and health and saying that we need these higher levels for health or that a lower level is worse for health. I mean, there have been some studies showing less protein is bad for health, but we're looking at less protein and less calories in third world countries that are really not eating well, where they're eating nothing but cereal and they're not getting any, health things. I think the RDA protein levels are pretty accurate. I think if you exercise, you do need to add more to that. How much more? It's hard to say. I mean, bodybuilders are now saying that they need up to 2.2 grams, but a good study showed that there wasn't much difference between 1.8 and 2.2 grams per kilogram lean body mass. I think the studies show pretty clearly that 1.2 grams per kilogram lean body mass looks to be very adequate, and doing more than that doesn't give you a whole big, huge advantage. So maybe you're a swimmer on the Olympic team where 0.1 second counts. For the vast majority of us, I don't see that we need that extra protein, and I think it could be a real problem.
In chapter 16 of Proteinaholic, what did you mean by reducing animal protein? The why, how, and what?
The why, how, and what of reducing animal protein is a long topic. I mean, the why could be several reasons. What's your why? We all have a different why. Decreasing animal protein, as that whole book goes into, could be very helpful for living a longer life, avoiding cancer, losing weight, avoiding diabetes, treating heart disease. We've got great studies to show that. Your why may be about the environment. There is no question that, and I could show you tons of science behind the fact that raising animal livestock is costly to the environment, whether it's CO2 production, whether it's methane production, whether it's water utilization, whether it's poisoning of our rivers and our oceans. It's amazing that we even have to argue this anymore. People come up with the most obscure, ridiculous studies to try to argue against this, but this should be common sense. 6 billion people, 70 billion animals. We have to feed those animals in order to feed ourselves. It's a middleman we just don't need. So from an environmental aspect, that might be a why. Your why could simply be the absolute, utter, awful torture these animals have to go through in these feedlots and slaughterhouses. There's no way you could look at those and say it's ethical. So you could have an ethical standpoint, you could have an environmental standpoint, you could have a health standpoint. For me, it's all three of them. All three of them go into my why. The how, that's complicated. I mean, it doesn't have to be you go vegan. It doesn't have to be that you go vegetarian. It can be that you just decrease the amount of meat, dairy, eggs, fish that you eat. You don't have to completely stop anything. It could just be switching the plate from a big piece of meat to a big thing of vegetables and a side of meat. You know, these are all personal things, but the more you do, I mean, we vote with our dollar. The more dollars you spend on meat, the more dollars you spend on environmental degradation, on, I mean, you're paying someone to slaughter that animal, whether you like it or not. You're creating a demand. So you got to keep those things in your mind when you're creating the how. There's lots of hows. I mean, there are all kinds now. To eat a plant-based diet is easy now. Now, it's so easy that it can be unhealthy, because you could eat a standard American diet in a vegan form now, right? Oreos are vegan. You could have a double cheeseburger. You could have a double bacon vegan cheeseburger, believe it or not. So you do have to be careful with that. But I find a plant-based diet extremely easy, cheap. My diet is fairly simple. I mean, oatmeal and berries for breakfast, a big salad, baked potato and beans for lunch, vegetable stir fry, rice and beans, vegetable pastas. Very simple, very easy diets. There's all kinds of diet programs out there to help you do it.
Why do you say we don't need a lot of protein and that we don't need it from animal products?
Well, the RDA, I think, clearly shows we don't need nearly as much protein as we thought we did. And all the research that I put in my book shows that you just don't need that much protein. You also don't need it from animal products. You could get all the protein you need from plant-based products. That's been shown over and over again. I haven't had any animal protein 13 years. I'm running Ironmans, I'm doing marathons. And it's not just me, it's all the patients that I treat that go plant-based. It's, you know, this huge community that's growing and growing that is not eating animal protein and thriving athletically, thriving in their health. Plants provide adequate protein. Protein is important. It's so important it's everywhere. It's in broccoli, you know, it's in kale. It's in things you didn't know had protein. And you could certainly put together a plant-based diet that has all the requisite amino acids that you need in order to not just survive, but also thrive.